Thank you to SOSV for hosting this great event. And we have with us Sonia, Peter, and Antoine. I want to throw to you guys really quick to introduce your companies and technologies and what you hope to accomplish with them. If you can fit that into a very quick intro, maybe we can start with Sonia.
Hi, I'm Sonia Kastner. I'm the CEO of Pano AI. We have developed a fully managed solution for active wildfire detection and intelligence. And we do this by mounting cameras to high mountaintop locations combined with satellite feeds. And we use these cameras to detect the first wisps of smoke using artificial intelligence. And then we alert first responders so that they can contain the fire while it's still small. And we hope to help roll back this devastating wildfire trend using modern day technology.
Great. And Antoine, you have a sort of a higher perspective. Where are you at?
Yes, so I am the founder and president of Kayrros. And Kayrros is a god of opportunity in the Greek mythology. And the opportunity is to use satellite to measure the three key parameters that we need to manage climate change. So the first one is to measure greenhouse gas emission. So we do that by satellite. That was not done before. The second thing is we measure biomass and biodiversity to look at whether the trees are growing or not on the global scale. And finally, we also look at wildfires and physical risk to model that from the top, which is very complementary to what Sonia is doing.
Absolutely. And Peter, you have a very ground level perspective on this.
We effectively kind of bridge the gap between that and satellite. Also, another god, ours is Gaia.ai, the Greek goddess of nature. And so with Gaia, what we're building is a data platform that helps timber companies basically maximally utilize their management of their forests for both timber and producing wood supplies for society for their own business model, but also bridging the gap towards verifying things like carbon credits or measuring biodiversity, mitigating forest fire risk, things like this. And we use LiDAR and cameras on the ground below the canopy and merge that with satellite imagery from above in order to do this kind of optimization.
Excellent. Well, thanks for the intros. I feel like the first question that comes to mind with this emerging and complex coincidence of industries is who's the customer? Who wants what you've got? Ultimately, obviously, you're filling a need, whether that's public or commercial, and sometimes it can be surprising where these sort of tech forward services fit into the this complicated equation. So, Peter, you mentioned forestry as well as fire and stuff like that. Maybe you can start and continue your thoughts there, and we'll get to Sonia and Antoine.
Yeah, perfect. Well, to start off, actually, this is probably a really interesting question for Gaia because we pivoted like heck at the beginning, right? It was a long soul search trying to figure out how do we build up a sustainable and attractive business while doing the kinds of things we want to. And what we found was that we're very passionate about a carbon market, but there was actually a growing skepticism in the market from investors and from others around value just from carbon. And so where we kind of found our DNA was, okay, let's create a ton of value for these timber companies. And it also aligns very strategically with the kinds of problems we want to solve around carbon to make these credits real and high quality. So let's partner and get involved with these timber companies, providing a lot of value with what they do today, and then also build the technology, the perfect technology to connect them to the carbon market and start to solve some of those problems. So our customer is these timber companies, the big companies that are managing millions of acres of forestry and are trying to explore the new AI and the new LiDAR, all these kinds of technologies in the future. My team and I come from autonomous vehicles, and so we're pretty much we bridge this gap for them. We bring some of the cutting edge of what's coming out of MIT and all these autonomous vehicle companies to solve these problems that they have today around timber inventories, but then also connect them to the growing carbon market.
Right. I feel like that overlaps really nicely with Sonia, your side of things. It feels like there's definitely, if not overlap, that a sort of complementary feel to that. Where do you fit in there?
Yes, absolutely. So We sell to a range of industries, and our customers are any entity that needs to know about a new fire ignition within minutes. And that, of course, includes fire agencies that are responsible for suppression at the city, county, state, and federal level. But it also includes asset owners and industries that have big physical world footprints. So the power utility sector is a large customer base for us. They need to make decisions around de-energizing assets or informing, say, a hospital that they might be about to lose power. We also work with forestry companies as well who have assets at risk, ski resorts that need to be able to evacuate their residents, and also the insurance industry has been really interested in the data that we're gathering as well. So we're actually it feels like every week we're starting to sign up a customer in a new industry.
I'm not surprised. And I've heard the same thing about satellite imagery, obviously, Antoine. In various domains, there's this huge demand for it, this huge appetite for it, but there are new markets coming all the time. So where have you found that your approach to satellite imagery and analysis has gotten traction?
So we really focus ourselves on creating independent measurements. So the beauty with satellite that you don't need to ask permission to be, to measure something on the ground. So we really produce independent data that will be used mainly by financial institutions and government regulatory bodies. And financial institutions, it can be investors, because we are going to give them a specific view on the quality of an asset. So it's an investment decisions report. It can be the risk department of wholesale banking, because we will inform the bank on their physical risk around wildfires, drought, or flooding, or their finance emission risk, because there is a huge gap between what companies report in terms of emission and what we measure. So, and finally, insurance will be very interested also to know to have model of the physical risk. So it's really financial institution at large, and then government will use that to send fines, and so for now there is no loop of detecting missing and fining, but with the IRA it's happening, and soon there will be a fine if there is a methane leak, and will be part of this monitoring system.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose an interesting perspective on this, I feel, is that we need to quantify pretty much everything you're measuring more. We need more data. But how do you determine whether your product or your service is a success, whether the thing you're putting out there is having an effect? Do we have the data and the policies already in place where you can say, well, before we were able to alert emergency staff about wildfires or ski resorts or whatever, we had this kind of response, we had this kind of risk, and after we have this kind of risk, we have this kind of response. Do we have the data and the policies to like learn whether you are having an effect? And if not, how do we get those? I feel like, Peter, you seem to be nodding your head a lot. There's a lot of you have opinions.
I have opinions. Yeah, I love this question, right? And so I did an MBA towards entrepreneurship. The cliche of an MBA in entrepreneurship is people yelling at you to talk to the customer, right? So we spent 2 years talking to the customer. And in those 2 years, half of that, or a part of that, right, was the demand side, was the people at Google, Microsoft, Amazon, the people buying these credits, what do they care about? And there was a huge disconnect between that and the supply, right? The supply side is so focused on their own problems, which is how do we create more credits? How do we increase the quantity of credits? And the demand side who's buying it is looking at the quality around how do I know that this is additional and truly making an impact? Every Bloomberg article that comes out, or Forbes that's tearing apart forestry, for example, and carbon credits, is poking at exactly this, right? Is poking at errors in the additionality of what these credits are trying to do. When I pay for 1 ton of carbon, how do I know that 1 ton of carbon was truly sequestered, and in a world where I did not pay for that credit, it would not have been? And so we built up Gaia. Honestly, this was so core to what we're trying to solve, right? And we took this kind of like macro perspective on it. It's very cliche MIT, right? They try to throw system dynamics at everything. And I think here it really applies. So we zoomed in on, okay, how do we actually get at this additionality? And our argument, right, what we're building up with Gaia by partnering with these timber companies is getting a data-driven way to show additionality, is getting, okay, here's what they would have done in a world without this credit. And we know that because we help them do it, right? We help them optimize their bottom line and their forest management based on the incentives that they have today and what their fiducial responsibility to their shareholders, right? But then beyond that, then we get to go to the customer and we set this up in a win-win. We solve this problem so it solves everyone's problems, right? Where I go to the same customer, the timber company, and I say, look, I told you Gaia can make you this much money. I lied to you. It can make you so much more money, right? And what is that difference? That difference is carbon, biodiversity, forest fire mitigation, all these positive externalities for society, right? And now we can measure that impact and go to the market and ask for something that's not a freaking $7, $14 a ton credit, right? That's holding this back. Ask for something for that quality that's closer to $20, $50 when direct air capture is selling for $100, right? So we want to solve all these problems by building up the business in this way.
Gotcha. And Sonia, have you had some sort of like, it feels like you have in a way maybe the most, I don't want to say easy to measure, but you are working with very direct events of like, we were able to respond this fast before, now we can respond in 15 minutes or whatever.
Yes, it's, now that we have been in market and detecting and alerting on incidents thousands of times for 3 years, I think we do at this point have a lot of qualitative and quantitative data to point to that shows the value of this technology and reducing wildfire risk for our customers. First of all, even before, to Peter's point, you don't start a company until you feel confident you're going to solve a real problem. Even before Pano was founded, there had been studies across the globe around the pretty obvious insight that every minute matters in fire response. The sooner that a suppression resource can get to an incident and the sooner they can get there with a heavy response, the smaller the fire is when it's contained and the less destruction. And this has been shown through studies in Australia and the US. And I mean, if you look at a fire station, there's a fire pole so that firefighters can shave seconds off of their time to get to the fire. So, time is everything in firefighting. So we built a tool to shave minutes and hours off of the response. And then, we do that through both the detection with AI, which can be faster than waiting for a bystander to happen to see the fire. And then we can also shave minutes and hours off of the time that it takes to pinpoint and confirm that it is a true fire, because a lot of 911 calls are not are actually false alarms. They could be a fog or a campfire. Yeah. And finally, every single week now during fire season, we get calls from our users saying, "Oh my God, yesterday you pushed us an incident and it made all the difference." This was a fire that was started as a structure fire. It was right next to a forest. Because of Pano, you alerted us earlier. We were able to get there with a heavy response. We contained it from even getting to the forest and even becoming a vegetation fire, or we contained this vegetation fire at just 5 acres because we were able to pull in a helicopter sooner. And these stories have now come in week after week after week for the 3 years we've been in market.
That's great. It feels like it must be very validating for your sort of your approach, for someone to say like the fire is smaller because of what you made available to us. And Antoine, you have with more data and more abstract analysis, I feel like maybe there's more of a quantitative approach. Have you seen any effect on the companies that you've worked with, or the ability to enforce policies or that kind of thing?
So it really depends on the players. So financial institutions today they use that almost on a daily basis. So commodity traders, hedge funds, they use satellite-based information for their investment decision, for their risk analysis. So it's becoming mainstream for the buy side. Insurance as well. We have insurance companies that are using our wildfire risk score to make underwriting decision and pricing decisions. So this really, it's becoming day to day, and it has really moved from the military to, financial institution. Also, I agree with Sonia for firefighters. We provide them with the quantity of vegetation around the buildings which give them the opportunity to decide whether to prioritize or not, this building versus this building. And we made a test this summer with the Saint-Tropez, firefighters, in the south of France, and it was very useful for them. They used to have maybe 10% of a view on 10% of the building, and now they're at 100% of the building with a weekly refresh on what was the status of vegetation around the building. So that's really working now.
That's great.
What is really slow is using on the regulatory body, the UN, and that's very slow. It takes a lot of time to use the information we create around methane to find that. So that's my next battle, let's say.
Yeah, well, and of course, I think we all understand why it's slow, and those things just fundamentally, UN, EU, all this kind of stuff it acts slow, but hopefully effectively at the end. It's not as important. I mean, it's very important in the long term, but in the short term, I'm kind of curious. All three of your companies kind of straddle the line between sort of real time and more long term data collection and analysis, and you have opportunities to do both. But how do you think that the data ecosystem that you're participating in and that you're helping change, how is that going to accommodate these new capabilities? How is it going to integrate them, and where does it need to move faster, do you think? Sonia, I feel like maybe you've had the most exposure to this, like really short term, like we need this now sort of feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where all of these new data products are really complementary and greatly needed. The disaster management industry includes 4 phases. There's the real-time response phase, which is the heat of the moment of the disaster, but there's also recovery, there's mitigation, there's preparedness, and the theme we heard from our customers is that they are looking for more data at all of these phases. Emergency managers are starved for data, and natural disasters are getting worse and worse due to climate change. And data it's not the only tool, but it can be one tool to help emergency managers to rise to the challenge. And so, Pano's first product is focused on solving a critical gap in the real-time phase of a fire during fire season with a suppression solution. Actually, that same suppression technology that we deliver is also being used by our customers as a mitigation technology to help safely monitor prescribed burns in the off season. And similarly, our customers are using our incident archive to analyze historic incidents to help them make mitigation investment decisions. Like, for example, utility customers are embarking on a process of burying power lines, and they have to make decisions around how to design a phased rollout of that expensive and time-consuming process. So I think, first of all, real-time data can be later used as offline data to help make decisions in the other phases, but also complementary solutions from Peter's company and as well as Kayrros can add a complementary offline data stream. So I think more is more. We need data at all these phases of the disaster lifecycle.
Absolutely. And I think that dovetails well with what you were just talking about. Are you finding that there is uptake and demand for the data that you're providing? Are there some sides of the industry that are faster to move, or what is your experience here with how this data economy is evolving?
So the Ukraine war has been a defining moment to show, to demonstrate the value of open source intelligence. And clearly, we see much more interest following, this very unfortunate situation, by economic players to use this technology for economic decision. And we've really seen a big change in the last 12 months. And as I said, all the buy side is moving into that. All the insurance, companies are moving into that. So that's a tide that won't stop. I think, satellites and other type of data mean that you can know everything that is happening anytime, everywhere in the planet. And when you think about the opportunity that this kind of data brings to you, I mean, it's infinite. It's going to be a game changing like GPS used to be, or the internet. it's a core technology that will change a lot of decision making in the future.
Well, I think people are going to adopt it whether they like it or not. Peter, I feel like your data is more specialized. I think and it is more sort of a responsive sort of feels in the middle part here of these two, not to say extremes, but the hyper local and the top view. So where do you fit in, and have you seen? Do you think that this you fit into a new data economy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. So again, my bias on the world, my lens is from the autonomous vehicle space, right? Writing that kind of AI. And no car drives just off of LiDAR or just off of camera or just off of radar, right? It's sensor fusion is a buzzword for a good reason, right? It's about each sensing modality has huge strengths and huge weaknesses. And so the name of the game is by combining these different modalities, you can get this guy's strengths and this guy's strengths to overcompensate for each other's weaknesses. And so that's a view that we definitely have on the world. I view the world of data on these two dimensions that I think most matter for as far as forest inventories and timber. One is scale, and there satellite imagery is king, right? But the problem with satellite imagery is it's the weakest measurement that you'll get on the forest as far as all the other offerings. It's a sensor that's miles away from the measurement, and it's some blurry pixels that you're trying to infer a lot of information out of. The opposite end of the extreme that we offer is the sensing backpack below the canopy. As far as all technologies, this is like the least scalable thing you'll ever do, right? You still have a forester walking around below the canopy, but it's the richest measurement you'll ever get on those trees. And a lot of that measurement is the trunk that's below that canopy. So our approach really is about, okay, let's combine all these different approaches and get the strengths of each in order to compensate for the weaknesses of each. But the other thought here is that, so this is new, right? And we're plugging into a pretty old industry. And so we try to make it look, this is very core to everything we're building. We try to make it look and feel very familiar, right? And so we plug into how they think about the world today and the data that they collect today, which is in terms of plots, right? And they abuse central limit theorem so hard, right? They use that to try to get statistical confidence on averages of whole areas. And so we plug into that. We plug into that kind of statistics and that kind of way of thinking. But we just improve it so much more. And then we also hint to them, here's what this can be, right? We show them a technology that can do so much more, but by plugging into what they do today.
Right. So this actually transitions very well into talking about the advances in the technology, how they've made possible what you're going to do. And Antoine, I will give you the chance to respond to the blurry pixels far away allegation thrown by Peter. But Peter, I wanted to what you were talking about. You know, you're at that very low level. You've got a hiker with a backpack, walking through the forest. I've seen some projects like this where they are using drones, where they're using robots, where they're using various other automated means. Why stick to the hiker side of things? And, especially with your autonomous vehicle, background, why make this choice? And how is that going to evolve in the future? And then the others can talk about how theirs is evolving as well.
I love this. Oh man, sorry. These are like my favorite topics. And also every time I go to ICRA or IROS, any kind of robotics and AI conference, that's the question I get, right? Why can't it be a drone, or why can't you put like Boston Dynamics walking through it? The answer is a fewfold, right? So when I was growing up, I interned at what's their name? Palantir, right? And Palantir, coming out of PayPal Mafia, has this kind of view on the world of it's the golden age of augmentation, not full out automation. Let's empower the human expert, right, with these kinds of technologies and these kind of capabilities. It's also responsible AI, right? You're not replacing the job. Timber industry is an industry that has a growing labor shortage. They can't supply enough people to do this work. So we make the forester a superhuman, right, by empowering them with this. It's also bootstrapped, right? We're not so cocky that we're going to try to build the whole thing and automate the heck out of everything all at once. And we know we can't do that, right? We need to start with specific things that create a lot of value. And the forester bridges the gap, right? They add so many insights that are hard to automate with AI, and they bring insights and education and experience that creates a lot of value. The other problem though is, so I'm not a complete skeptic around, for example, things flying over the canopy and collecting data that way, aerial LiDAR, aerial camera imagery. And so we have an NSF grant with an AI lab at Carnegie Mellon, largely exploring, it's kind of awkwardly in the middle of these two axes, right? It's less scalable than satellite. It's less rich of a measurement than our measurement below the canopy. So does it actually create value in this context where we use both of these to complement each other? And I'm skeptical, but we are exploring if there is value there. But as far as below the canopy, it's the most technically hard problem to solve. And getting drones or other things to fly through these trees, that creates the least amount of business value to the customer because they still need to deploy a person to deploy that drone, limited battery capacity. And now it's a different human, right? It's not the skill set that they employ today. It's a totally different technical skill set.
Right.
So that kind of all led to our decision making of starting here and here, right? Let's use the most scalable and combine it with the most rich measurement. And we are exploring drones above canopy as something in the middle. But we're healthy skeptics of the value that might create.
Gotcha. Sonia, I think it's interesting that you have to apply the sort of modern computer vision and AI techniques to characterize smoke plumes and other features that you see. I'm sure there's a lot of opportunity there, but there's also this challenge of actually putting cameras at the tops of eminences or mountains or watchtowers and installing those. It's like this combination of like the old school forestry and mountaineer capabilities and needs, the practical needs, but also the super high tech, cutting edge. We need to be able to identify this immediately. So how has technology enabled you, and what are the challenges you're still facing there?
Great question. And I think that goes to the question of, why are there not a dozen venture-backed companies, putting up cameras for AI detection when the Nest Cam, which I worked on in 2014, is a technology that has been around for a long time, and the Ring doorbell. Our product from a technology perspective is very similar. Now we are leveraging from a technological perspective, we are leveraging technological advancements over the last 5 years, like 5G technology and Starlink, really improved connectivity deeper into the forest. We're leveraging advances in cloud scalability and computer vision over the past 5 years. But I would say one of the most difficult parts of our business is indeed the operational challenge. And I'm sitting here in our factory today. I have a background in supply chain and manufacturing. And Pano needs to be not just an IoT technology company like a Nest or a Ring, but we also need to be an equipment manufacturer and installer as well, combined all under one roof. So we manufacture the equipment ourselves. We have a network designer who designs the optimal network based on existing tower locations. And our team handles leasing. It's actually very similar to the supply chain for installing telecom, like installing equipment for cellular carriers. We actually, one of our investors is T-Mobile, and they provided a lot of expertise for us on how to deploy equipment in remote locations. And so the fact that we've now gotten very good at this, and we can install very rapidly at high volume, and we're now set up to scale this technology across the globe. We're already in 6 states in the U.S. and soon to be 4 states in Australia. We're planning to have hundreds of units by the end of this year. And but very few companies have that capability combined with the technological expertise to deliver complex hardware, software, and AI. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No, it's an interesting and unique challenge. And Antoine, now is your chance for revenge on Peter. But also, I think it's very interesting. You have an interesting perspective as a pure software play on satellite imagery. And so I'm curious how the software side of things has evolved when the actual imagery, from Galileo or the various planet monitoring satellites that you use as raw data, that doesn't change, but your ability to interpret that data or analyze it, produce value from it changes. So I'm curious how that has progressed for you.
Yeah, it's all about using, combination of physical modeling and machine learning and AI. Because, the sensors are not blurred, because if you use the phase of a SAR, a synthetic, aperture radar, your resolution is 1 millimeter. So we can see millimeter changes from the sky. It's the same with the LiDAR. So there is a bunch of sensors that are extremely precise and at scale. And that's the interest of satellite imagery. But to have something that is reliable, you need to have the ground truth to calibrate your models. Right. And this is where it takes a lot of time and expertise to be able to to create the right combination of sensors that create a proxy and a measurement that is reliable and at scale. And there is many things we cannot do. We cannot see below the canopy, for instance, but we can measure the height of the trees very well at scale. We know we've covered the full Amazon. We can count all the trees. We can have the full measurement of the canopy. But there is an error rate, which is 10 or 15%, which is much higher, obviously, than what you will get if you go on the ground. So there are arbitrage that you have to do between scale and the error that you are looking for. As far as we are concerned, our customer, they are looking for independent measurement, and they had nothing before, and now there's something which is 1, 5, 10% error rate, which is much better than anything else they had before.
That's great.
Just to be clear,
Peter, you want to respond really quickly, and we got to wrap up. But yeah, I want to hear what you say.
I do want to throw in the white flag that was not meant to on an attack. We talked
No, I know.
I think what he's building is actually really cool. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm just yakking. So we have just like a minute left. So I just want to give you all the opportunity to really quickly, maybe if you have anything cool upcoming, like any upcoming projects or research or something that you want to throw out there, just if you have, just throw it out there. If you got, consider yourselves to have a free 10 seconds to see what's happening. Sonia, you got anything cooking?
Look for our announcements of a bunch of new customer deployments all across the United States over the next few weeks.
Antoine, you got anything cool?
The cool thing coming up is using geostationary satellite to monitor in real time what where we used to have one image every day. Now we'll have permanent monitoring, and that's going to be very interesting.
I bet. And Peter, you're going to bring a backpack up here to the Pacific Northwest. I can give it a try.
Please do. We're lining up some pretty exciting pilots for Q4. And so, I can say that forestry management as practice is going to look very different in 3 years because we're going to make it the case. And so we're excited, if you're a timber company or know any, come partner with us. And we're launching some really cool technology in the next few months.
All right. Well, thank you all for taking the time to talk. This is super interesting, and I love how these three companies sort of work together in this, as different layers of this really complex industry. So thanks very much, Peter, Sonia, and Antoine, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.